If elected, what I will do is I'll put together a national commission bipartisan commission of scholars, constitutional scholars, Democrats, Republicans, liberal, conservative. And I will ask them to, over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations as to how to reform the court system, because it's getting out of whack, the way in which it's being handled. And it's not about court packing. There's a number of other things that our constitutional scholars have debated, and I'd look to see what recommendations that commission might make.
So you're telling us you're going to study this issue about whether to pack the court?
No, whether there's a number of alternatives that go well beyond packing.
This is a live ball.
Oh, it is a live ball. No, it is a live ball. We're going to have to do that. And you're going to find there's a lot of conservative constitutional scholars who are saying it as well. The last thing we need to do is turn the Supreme Court into just a political football. Whoever has the most votes gets whatever they want. Presidents come and go. Supreme Court justices stay for generations.
We've heard a lot lately about whether the Democrats will look to pack the court as a response to the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett. It's an idea that our next guest first brought up over 2 years ago. CNBC founder Tom Rogers wrote in June of 2018, quote, "If the Democrats take the House, Senate, and presidency in 2020, this neutralization of the nuclear option by expanding the court is very viable. Moreover, there is much historical precedent for doing so. The Democrats could simply increase the number of justices to neutralize any ideologically extreme appointments that President Trump is successful in making from this point in time on forward." And Tom joins us now with a new piece this morning for Newsweek entitled "Unpack the Supreme Court." So, Tom, what do you mean by that?
Thanks for having me on today, Mika. Well, what I mean by that is it's the Republicans who packed the court. They threw out 3 Supreme Court norms to get 3 new justices on the court. They denied Garland a vote. They reduced the threshold for Senate vote approval. And now they're ramming through a new justice 1 week before an election where close to 40 million people will have voted by then. And so anything that the Democrats do to take up the suggestion that you mentioned I wrote about a couple years ago would be unpacking the court. And there is historical precedent for it. As Joe wrote in a recent column, it was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who actually expanded the court from 9 to 10. And the whole notion of packing the court came out of FDR, where he put forward 6 justices to control the outcome. It was defeated. He wasn't able to pack the court. But the idea was to put on 6 justices that would guarantee the outcome of upholding New Deal legislation. If the Democrats put 2 new justices on the court, they wouldn't be guaranteeing any outcome. It would still be a 6-5 conservative majority court where Roberts would probably be the swing vote. But by no means would they have done anything that controls the outcome. They'd be bringing the court to the center, and they'd be bringing the court into a realm out of extremism, into a place where it will have much more legitimacy for its ruling. Most importantly, there's I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's interesting, Tom, that, you did bring this up 2 years ago. It's interesting that conservatives, there were some conservatives who were actually writing columns when they thought Hillary Clinton was going to be elected president. And Ted Cruz, who suggested the court contract for Ted Cruz. He said, we don't have to fill the 9th seat. The Supreme Court can work with 8. But as you said, there is a long, rich history. Originalists especially should support a flexible size for a Supreme Court, because you go back to the writing of the Constitution. George Washington set the number at 6 even before Rhode Island had ratified the Constitution. Then John Adams did the same thing in 1801. He expanded it. Or took it down 1. Thomas Jefferson added. Same thing with Andrew Jackson. He added members. Then you had Abraham Lincoln add another, as you said. When he died, Republicans actually took 2 or 3 off and waited until they controlled the White House again to put another on the court. So if originalists say that history doesn't really matter. You have to go back to the founding of the republic and see what the framers and the people around that document were thinking at the time. Well, my gosh, the first, second, third, and seventh presidents all altered the size of the court.
Great point, Joe. And there's an even more modern precedent. And this is, I'm very surprised, has not entered the debate because it's sitting right in front of everybody today. And it's our courts of appeal. You know, most people are familiar with the fact that there's a trial court with one judge, and then you get a right of appeal in the federal courts to a Court of Appeals 3-judge panel. But when those courts of appeal hear their most important cases, when they're acting most like the Supreme Court, where they decide what cases to hear, they're not required to hear them, just like the Supreme Court isn't required to hear any case. When they hear those big cases, they meet en banc. And what that means is 11 judges of the courts of appeal hear the case. That's how the world works today. And so some circuits, even more judges sit. One circuit has 16 judges who sit in those cases. Why? It brings more perspectives to the decision. So right there, it would be bringing the Supreme Court up to the standard of how the courts of appeal work when their most important cases are heard. Not to mention the fact that the workload on the Supreme Court has grown exponentially in the last couple decades. Adding a couple of justices to the court would very much help that. And we've expanded the number of circuits where you mentioned just before historically had a lot to do with adding justices to the Supreme Court because they personally oversee the courts of appeal. Well, we now have 12, actually with one specialty court, 13 circuits, and yet we don't have enough justices on the Supreme Court each to individually oversee a circuit. So there's a lot of reform measures here, which wouldn't guarantee any outcomes, but would bring the Supreme Court up to the standards that the Court of Appeals already has adopted.
Tom Rogers, thank you very much for being on.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.